If your business runs on 5 different apps, 12 browser tabs, and one spreadsheet that everyone's afraid to touch, it's probably time for Odoo. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that connects every part of your business into one powerful, easy-to-use platform. So instead of wasting time switching between disconnected systems, your entire business works together in real time. Your team moves faster, your data stays accurate, and you can actually focus on growing your business. Let one unified system run your entire business. From the first opportunity to the final payment, everything works together in one place. Whether you're a small business or managing a large operation, Odoo gives you the flexible platform built to grow with you. Try it today for free at odoo.com. That's ODOO.com.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Well, hello and welcome and Happy New Year. My name is Mark Seelinger. I am the director and founder of the Swamp School, and I want to wish you a Happy New Year and welcome you to our inaugural 2021 podcast. We have decided to move our regularly scheduled Wetland Wednesday basically blog post to a podcast, and this is our new format. So we're kind of excited about that. So I just wanted to welcome you to this and see how it goes. Now, I know a number of you have been kind of pondering the transference from 2020 to 2021, and it's sort of like, well, we've made it. It kind of reminds me a little bit of at least 2020 about the book Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day, except we could probably substitute the title there to Very Bad Year. But at any rate, it is what it is, and we're all here. So welcome. And it's 2021. Now, the purpose of this podcast is to basically go over regulations and rules and changes and things that have kind of gone on. And we've been doing these kind of on a sometimes weekly, sometimes monthly basis. We're going to try to do this a little more frequently in terms of at least maybe every other couple of weeks or so. So we'll be posting on our website as well as sending out an email when these things are ready to go. But you're welcome to subscribe to this. And if we can figure out the technology, we should have this all on Spotify and all the other places that you get podcasts from. So I'm kind of excited about that as well. So there's a lot of new stuff going on here. Now, in terms of the content, basically we're covering a lot of different regulations. And one of the more interesting things kind of happened at the tail end of 2020. And it was with Florida. Kind of a big deal, actually. In 1972 or so, when the Clean Water Act was passed, the idea was that the states would eventually take over the role that pretty much the Army Corps ran. The idea is that the Army Corps would deal with primarily the commerce waters, the navigable waters, and the states would deal with everything else. And in the last almost 50 years since the law has been passed, we've had two states, New Jersey and Michigan, who have taken over that role. However, in the end of basically in December of 2020, Florida has become the third state to do so. And it's been, I guess, 33 years since the last states have done this. Now, the idea basically was that the states are supposed to have the sensitivity to understand what, if, specific concerns they may have in a state. Obviously, wetlands in Florida are going to be different than wetlands in Maine. So they were always, the states were supposed to keep track of this. Now, they have in many ways, a lot of states have already taken on this role. And under Section 401 of the Clean Water Act, the states offer water quality certifications on various permits. And that program has been in effect since the onset, essentially, of the Clean Water Act. But Section 404 deals more with the geographic extent of waters of whether it's the United States or in this case, the state. And that's been up to Florida and New Jersey and Michigan to determine that. Well, in order to do that, the EPA has to basically approve their program. And this has been a very slow, protracted process. Some states have picked it up and dropped it, and it hasn't gone very well. Ohio was kicking it around for a while, and then it kind of, went away a little bit. Maybe it'll be back. So it's been kind of a protracted process. But basically, the EPA has also not really been super fast track on it. It's just been kind of a long process. Well, to give you a little bit of the timeline on this, Florida had decided basically they had passed their own law in 1994, and this extended and expanded whatever the federal program didn't cover. So it did not include the federal waters of the U.S. areas, but it included areas that were basically kind of above and beyond what the federal government would cover. And then in 2018, Florida started the process of the 404 assumption, and that's essentially what we refer to this as 404 assumption. And the idea is that there are assumable waters and the retained waters. The assumable waters are what's going to be assumed by the state. The retained waters are going to be retained by the federal government, aka the Corps. This is going to require rulemaking, and this has to happen at the state legislature level. There has to be a law passed. So this was the there was basically the Wetlands Protection Act of 1994. New Jersey had something similar. For example, the Freshwater Wetlands Protection Act of 1987 was as an example. But in Florida, it was 1994. And they didn't really do much with it since then. Well, in 2018, they started the process, so it took about 2 years. And in August, Florida submitted the assumption request to U.S. EPA for approval. So it took them a couple years to kind of get to the point of having something to send to EPA. And I'm sure EPA was involved in that process. And in December, EPA granted approval of the 404 assumption with a January 2021 effective timeframe, as in this month. Doing this recording earlier in the month. This is first week of January, so it's entirely possible between the time we record this and the time it shows up in the Federal Register. It may happen, but who knows? But it's supposed to show up in the Federal Register, and once that happens, that's the effective date of the new law or the new rule assumption. So that is going on now. There's a couple things that are interesting with Florida. I mean, Florida has extremely unique ecosystems, and they have resulting in a slightly different way of looking at wetlands, and it even has its own methodologies for identifying wetlands. There's some very specific wetland types that they want to regulate, so it goes beyond just simply is it a jurisdictional wetland to is it a jurisdictional wetland of a certain type, and it goes into some different categories there, so it's a little more complicated. What's also fun about it is that there's some of these habitats are actually non-wetlands, and so the habitats are part of the wetland system, but in and of themselves they're not wetlands. So this is something the Corps can't regulate. They don't have any way of regulating it. But Florida, if it passes the law, which it did, it can. Now, what's sort of the intention behind all of this is the 2020 Navigable Waters Protection Rule, which took place in the spring, basically, of last year, right in the middle of Corona, where this thing popped up and became law, or at least a regulation. And one of the things that was interesting about it was that it was really, really pulling back on these kind of questionable wetland areas. Now, questionable from the standpoint, nobody questioned that they were a wetland, but they were questionable as to whether they were under federal jurisdiction, hence all the fun that everyone's been having with the Supreme Court. And the issue was, does this fall under the Clean Water Act jurisdiction, or should it be something else? Well, the idea was that the Clean Water Act and the 404 basically waters would be the minimum that would be covered. The maximum would be whatever the states would want to do. And again, this gets back to the problem the states have had in that they have not picked up the ball on regulating their own wetlands and rely on the Corps to do that. And there's certainly budgetary reasons for wanting to do that. But again, New Jersey, Michigan, and Florida now have their own rules, and the idea is that they can expand whatever the federal government covers. As a matter of fact, it's kind of expected that that's what they're going to do, and that the federal government is only really concerned with those waters that affect interstate and foreign commerce, and that's really their only role on this. So to that end, these wetlands are questionable as to whether they affect interstate or foreign commerce, but the idea there is that even if they are questionable, because the state has determined that there's a water quality requirement for that particular wetland type, then they can go ahead and regulate it. So hence, that's where they've gone in. A lot of people were very upset about the Navigable Water Rule because it kind of pulled back on these smaller wetland areas, and that is a problem for states that don't regulate anything beyond the Corps. It's sort of a shame on them kind of approach. This is my humble opinion on this. It's, if the states really are concerned about it, then pass a law. It's just that simple. It's a lot easier to pass a law at a state level than it is at the federal level. Plus, there's also, when you get into some of these more incorporated towns and boroughs and such, especially in the New England area where this is a very popular way of doing their governance, you can literally pass a wetland ordinance in your town and decide that you want to regulate it, a particular type of wetland or a smaller wetland or whatever, under town ordinance. And it's not necessarily even having to go to a state level. So there's that possibility as well. Now, obviously, this affects all the real estate development, and everybody gets all bent out of shape about it. But the upshot of it is that it is a strategy. Now, with the Navigable Waters Protection Rule, the role of the state has greatly increased, and that, I think, was the intention of the rule in its onset, was to really make this the state's problem and not the federal government's problem. And, again, this is something that people have kind of gone back and forth on, and, how, is this good, bad, or indifferent? But it does kind of leave things open. So right now there are certain states where certain wetland types are not protected at all, and they're basically kind of open season on that, and that's not good news. So the idea is to decentralize and deregulate some of these federally traditionally regulated wetlands. What is interesting, though, is at the same time, you have to admit that, if the EPA, in fact, got the application from Florida in August and they approved it in December, that's warp speed by federal government standards. So this is taking, a process that would have taken much, much years longer and managed to crunch it down to a few months. Even the 2 years, quite frankly, even if you can go back to 2018 and assume that EPA was involved at the early stages, it's still a very fast turnaround time for a program like that. Now, going forward, we know there's no real certainty as to what's happening at the federal level. I don't even begin to guess. I'm recording this ahead of the Georgia elections and everything that the Congress is threatening to do with presidential stuff and everything else. So you'll have to forgive me if I'm a little dated here, but as it looks right now, there appears to be one presidential path, and then possibly there's another one. Unlikely, but possible. But who knows? This will affect kind of how things move forward, but looking into a crystal ball, there's kind of two scenarios I'm looking at. If we assume that things are moving forward and it's a Biden administration that we're looking at, there will probably be an effort to do something about the Navigable Waters Protection Rule. Now, historically, the Democratic presidents tend to more centralize things and try to make them more federal versus the Republicans, which try to put them more at the state level. So there is a possibility of federalizing some of these programs. A suggestion, if we're heading in that direction, is that being as the Navigable Water Rule took basically regulation away from certain areas, rather than retool it to basically subsume new wetland systems, would be rather to basically pass another regulation that regulates another set of wetlands and make that waters of the United States as well. Would probably be easier than trying to basically undo a regulation and redo it. This was kind of the case with the Clean Water Rule when the Obama era rules came out, was that basically the Trump administration, it took 4 years to basically undo that. And that was one that basically had not been fully implemented, which was one of the reasons it was able to do it. The Navigable Water Protection Rule has essentially been nationally implemented, the exception being Colorado. But for the other 49 states and territories, it is still the law of the land. So it would be very difficult to basically unregulate that at this point. Now, if the Trump administration persists, then the alternative basically, or the plan, I believe, is just to basically encourage more states to take these on and basically have more state control over that, which certainly the Biden administration can do as well. But it is, I doubt you would see any change in that water protection rule under the Trump administration, should it continue. So that's looking into a crystal ball, such that anyone has a crystal ball other than to throw at each other. So it's kind of a mess. But anyway, there are some other states that have been kicking this around. Ohio, I mentioned before, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Alaska have all been kicking this idea of assumption around. There have been some other states and some of the tribal nations as well have kind of undergone some process through that. There's an organization called the Association of State Wetland Managers. If you don't know about it, aswm.org is a great organization for doing these sort of things, and they basically help the states and tribes and other government entities that are qualified, basically being able to assume the 404 program. That was actually its charter. So it is an interesting development as well. So with that, I hope this was helpful. It's interesting to see what's going on with Florida, and we're definitely going to keep a close eye on it. And I hope you like this new format. Please tell your friends and let us know what you think. And if you run into any technological issues, we definitely let you know. I'd like to know that. But you can always visit us. If you have any technical questions or if you want to just get a chat going with us, visit us at swampschool.org. There's a chat button at the bottom, and chat away, and we'll be there. We try to maintain it during most business, during business hours, Eastern time for the most part. Off and on, if we're not there, just leave us a message. We've done away with the email system. We just kind of got a cluttered mess, and so we basically use either the live chat or a messaging system through the chat. If you need to reach us, we're pretty available. You can always give us a call too at 877-479-2673, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. But with that, I wish you well. Happy Wetland Wednesday. Happy Wetland Wednesday 2021 in the first of the month. And we will see you next time. Take care.
Hi, Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. Are you looking for a beach read this summer? May I suggest your big wireless bill? It's got suspense, mystery, a slightly flat, emotional arc, and a shocking twist where you realize you've been overpaying the entire time. Fortunately, though, Mint's story is better. Every plan, $15 a month, even unlimited. That's it. Happy ending, zero tears. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.
This is not a commercial for The Way I Heard It with Mike Rowe, the award-winning podcast now entering its 10th year and available wherever podcasts are listened to. No, this is a commercial for Mike Rowe's foundation, which has just set aside $10 million to help train the next generation of skilled workers. That money is available right now at microworks.org. It's waiting for anyone who wants to learn a skill that doesn't require a 4-year degree. Electricians, plumbers, linemen, welders, shipbuilders, HVAC techs. America is desperate for men and women with skills they don't teach in universities. And the MicroWorks Foundation is committed to helping train America's workforce for hundreds of thousands of AI-proof 6-figure jobs just waiting to be filled. Apply today for a work ethic scholarship at microworks.org or support our efforts with a donation of any size. We're closing America's skills gap one job at a time, and we could use your help at microworks.org, MIKEROWE works.org.